What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Off the Top Rope, Off the Mic Sports Network. Another week, another batch of ratings, and some good news and some bad news for AEW. Um, the good news: AEW drew one of its best numbers of the entire year on a regular episode of Dynamite. They go 711,000 with a 0.18 in the 18 to 49 demo. Great. That's great because I didn't think that this show, particularly, obviously they did a great job with, labeling the fact that Mark Briscoe and MJF was going to be the main event of this show. Obviously they had the World Championship match last week. Obviously the follow-up with Darby Allin doing crazy shit, and clearly the chase of him trying to get to Jon Moxley after his return at All in Texas. Like, clearly that's a big-time storyline that they're moving into. They also advertised Mercedes Moné was going to be on this show. Like, a lot of this show wasn't anything really to write home about, but hey, I got to give them credit where credit is due. 700,000. I didn't, there was a lot of people in my chat on my post show that were like, man, this is going to be lucky to get to 600,000. I didn't know if they were going to get to 650 or even 700,000. So for them to get there says a lot. They did a good job of pre-booking this show and, getting some advertisements. I don't know if there was lack of competition, but the other thing that I need to point out here, NXT did 740, 0.16, 1849 was down, they lost out to AEW. But this leads me into my one thing. Listen, I know how this is going to be portrayed by the sickos. They're gonna be like, hey, we're on the rise. I already saw some people saying, hey, it's not including Max. We might actually be I wouldn't be surprised if, Dynamite has more viewers than Raw. I was like, if you actually believe that, you're a moron. You're a moron. Because Netflix has 4 times the subscribers as HBO Max. I'm not even convinced that a lot of people actually watch on HBO Max. It's like for people like me on the West Coast trying to watch, the show live rather than, trying to stream it or something or find it somewhere else. This is effectively the best way to watch it is if you have HBO Max and you have access to it, you can watch it live on the West Coast. Like at the same time the East Coast fans are watching it, which is what a lot of us want to have. And that's, I think, what the beauty of, the whole Netflix thing with Raw is. Like, hey, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, everybody's watching it at the same time. So I do want to commend AEW for getting one of their better numbers of the year. We'll have to see if they can sustain it because, like I said, this has been my one common thing with this company really since, the portion of last year where, NXT went to CW and started beating AEW consistently in the ratings. If you're going to tell me, listen, it's great when you have these numbers, but you need to do 2 things with me. One, you need to sustain it, which AEW has consistently not been able to show that they can sustain these type of numbers on a week-to-week basis. Their numbers are all over the place, whether it's competition or not. They've been down below 600,000. They've been in the mid 600,000s. Now they're over 700,000. This was following a world championship match. This was their first show in an actual arena since the residency that lasted 3 weeks in Chicago at the Aragon Ballroom, which made them look kind of like an indie promotion, which was not a great look, but cool. They had a unique venue, so that was going to please a lot of the people out there. But at the same time, they've only beaten NXT, I think twice, maybe 3 times since, NXT went to CW. And I understand what that means. NXT is on network television. They're on the CW. A lot of more people have access to that than TBS or HBO Max. But at the same time, you've got these people mentioning, saying, hey, it doesn't include Max. And we're trying to use that as a qualification. Here's what I always go back to when it comes to the whole debate of why we lump NXT and AEW together. NXT has has some of AEW's former stars. A lot of people who the AEW fan base don't give a shit about. But Ethan Page is doing a lot better. Ricky Saints, is going through an arc of trying to conquer things. And, Blake Monroe is just getting started there. There's a lot of other, Sean Spears is over there. There's a lot. I mean, Brian Pillman Jr. now is Lexus King. There's a lot of former ex-AEW people that have gone into the NXT system in the Performance Center. And then there's also just a litany of NIL talent, Obafemi being the champion, obviously Trick Williams being and Javon Evans. Like, those are the mainstay stars of NXT. And NXT, like, it may not be a better wrestling show, but they know what they are. They're taking risk, whether it's good or bad. And clearly, it's, especially since the move to network television, it's resonated with more of the audience. And they're still beating NXT on a week-to-week basis, or NXT still beating AEW on a week-to-week basis. And when you have the roster that AEW has, when you have Hangman Adam Page, Mercedes Moné, Jon Moxley, Will Ospreay, even though he's not there, Swerve Strickland, you have Bobby Lashley, MVP, MJF, all these people. And I understand a lot of people coming out of that show were hurt, but you also just had your biggest North American show of the year. Like, you're expected to be like, I mean, you're an alternative to WWE, but you should be beating what is labeled the developmental of WWE, right? So I find it hilarious that AEW will always try to trump it up and try to have a caveat on, any one of their ratings things, whether it's good or bad, saying, oh, hey, we're not including Max. And, hey, the numbers went up, still lost to NXT. Yet I'm supposed to believe that some of the people and some of these morons in the fan base are like, yeah, the Max numbers are going to take us over what Raw is doing. Really? Are you guys idiots? Really? Like, it's going to be interesting to see how AEW does the latter portion of the year, because the build, like I talked about it on the post show and I talked about it on the channel. There's no urgency with this company. They're just doing what they know, which is good professional wrestling. And there was kind of a mess of a women's match on this show, which was really kind of embarrassing. I felt bad for Sky Blue, but these people are not trained in the way, and people will look at NXT when they have botches because there was a ref botch. But NXT is taking place in the Performance Center where people train. AEW is out on the road 50 some odd weeks out of the year. They spent 3 weeks in the same place. They just had their biggest North American show of all time. Yet I'm supposed to believe that AEW is supposed to be something comparable to, like, some of these other shows in WWE. And people are trying to turn this around and saying, the Fed's bad, TKO's bad because they're overcharging people. They may be overcharging people, but even if the product is, kind of slipped a little bit in 2025, they're still selling incredible numbers and people are still watching the product. It's like, I mean, they sold over 100,000 tickets for SummerSlam. I'll have another video up here shortly. Their first ever Stadium Survivor Series show is already is well on way to surpassing what All in Texas did. Their fourth show. Yet, hey, everybody's just fine and dandy with, hey, we had a better 18-49 night than NXT, but hey, you lost in total viewership. I've been saying this for close to a year, that when NXT agreed to that deal with CW, I was like, if something does not change in AEW, NXT is going to start beating AEW on a regular basis. And outside of maybe a couple of occasions, AEW has lost out to NXT in total viewership. You can chalk that up to, hey, one's on network television, one's on cable. Still, with the roster that AEW has, with the names that they have in their company, they should be able to, A, book a better show and get more people to tune in. This isn't a Max discussion. Don't give me that argument. There are not a lot of people who have access to Max. Like I said, I think there's 4 times less subscribers to HBO Max than there are to Netflix. So if you want to try and convince yourself that that HBO Max is making some sort of tangible difference in this product, you're just delusional. So congratulations, I guess, to AEW. Hey, you did 700,000. Try to sustain it and start beating NXT because that's really the baseline of when people are going to start taking you seriously. and then your fan base continually being delusional about it, that doesn't help your perception either. Expect and demand better, because to me, this product has really just, flatlined, and really, it's kind of boring. And they just, in 6 weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, I think it was more like 4 weeks ago, they had their biggest North American show of all time, almost 30,000 people in a baseball stadium. And their follow-up's not been very good. Anyway, we'll have a lot more on the channel here, some sports content coming as we're getting towards football, a lot of wrestling content as well. Appreciate everybody for subscribing. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.